Deep in the Utah desert, there's a scar on the landscape. It's not a canyon or a mountain. It's a concrete seal, plugging the entrance to what was once the Nutty Putty Cave. It entombs a nightmare. For decades, this was a popular spot for amateur adventurers. But today, it serves as the permanent tomb for one man. And he wasn't some reckless novice. He was a 26-year-old medical student and a father on a Thanksgiving trip with his family. So how did a fun holiday adventure end with him trapped 100 feet below the surface, upside down, in a crack no wider than a washing machine door? How did it lead to a frantic 27-hour rescue that would grip the world? This is the terrifying true story of John Edward Jones, and the fatal mistake that left him trapped forever. To really get the weight of this tragedy, you first have to understand the man. From everything we know, John Edward Jones was in the prime of his life. At 26, he was a promising medical student in Virginia, studying to become a pediatric cardiologist. He was a devoted husband to his wife, Emily, a doting father to their 1-year-old daughter, and they were excitedly awaiting the birth of their second child, a son. John was known for his warmth, his faith, and an adventurous spirit he'd had since he was a boy. His father often took him and his younger brother, Josh, on caving expeditions across Utah, giving them a deep appreciation for the dark, silent beauty of the world beneath our feet. The family had all gathered in Utah for Thanksgiving in November of 2009. Looking for a bit of nostalgia and adventure, John, his brother Josh, and a group of 9 others decided to explore a local landmark, Nutty Putty Cave. It had been years since John had been caving, and at 6 feet tall and 200 pounds, he was no longer the wiry teenager who could slip through any crack. Still, the allure of the cave was powerful. Nutty Putty Cave, about 55 miles from Salt Lake City, wasn't just some hole in the ground. Discovered in 1960, it was an immensely popular spot, named for the soft, brown, putty-like clay lining some of its walls. For decades, it was a favorite for scout troops, college students, and families, drawing up to 5,000 visitors a year. It was considered a perfect beginner's cave. Challenging, but not overly dangerous. Its passages were a maze of tight squeezes and winding tunnels with names that hinted at their nature. The Helmet Eater, the Big Slide, and the most famous of all, the Birth Canal. But the cave's popularity was also its curse. Constant traffic had worn the rock smooth, making it incredibly slippery. Between 1999 and 2004, 6 different people had to be rescued after getting stuck. Concerns over safety led officials to close the cave in 2006. It was only reopened in May 2009, just 6 months before John's visit, under a new system that required reservations to ensure safety. The Jones party had their permit and believed they were ready. They had no idea they were walking into a place that would soon be known for one of the most harrowing rescue attempts in modern history. On the evening of Tuesday, November 24th, 2009, around 8 p.m., the group of 11 adventurers dropped into the dark mouth of Nutty Putty Cave. The air grew cool and still as they left the surface behind, entering a world that stays a constant 55 degrees Fahrenheit year-round. They made their way through the first few passages, their headlamps cutting beams of light through the pitch black. They navigated the Big Slide, laughing and sharing the thrill of the descent. About an hour in, John, his brother Josh, and 2 others decided to split off and find a more challenging part of the cave, the famed Birth Canal, a notoriously tight crawl that was a rite of passage for many visitors. This is where everything went wrong. John pushed ahead, eager to lead the way. He spotted a narrow, horizontal crack he was sure was the entrance. Confident, he began to wriggle his way in head first, using his hips, stomach, and fingers to propel himself deeper into the earth. He quickly realized he'd made a terrible mistake. This passage was far tighter than he expected, with no room to turn around. He thought he must be near the end, so when he saw a fissure below him, he figured it was the drop that would let him reorient himself and exit. He took a deep breath, sucked in his chest to make himself as small as possible, and slid down into the fissure. The moment he did, he was hopelessly trapped. This wasn't the birth canal. He had mistakenly entered a known tight offshoot of the main passage that local cavers called Ed's Push. Instead of an open area, he found himself wedged in a tiny, L-shaped crack just 10 inches across and 18 inches high. He was stuck at a steep, 70-degree angle, completely upside down. His arms were pinned under his chest, and he couldn't move. He was trapped 100 feet underground and 400 feet from the cave's entrance, in one of the worst possible spots. His brother Josh was the first to find him. Seeing nothing but John's sneakers sticking out of the rock, a horrifying realization hit him. He grabbed John's calves and tried to pull, but John just slid back down. Panic began to set in. Josh knew this was beyond their ability to handle. He scrambled back to the surface and called 911, while a friend stayed behind to keep John company in the dark. The call went out at 9:30 p.m. The adventure was over. A desperate race against time had just begun. The first rescuer, a volunteer named Susie Mottola, reached John around 12:30 a.m., 3.5 hours after he got stuck. All she could see of him was a pair of running shoes. In the darkness, John's voice was strained, but polite. "Hi, Susie. Thanks for coming," he said. "But I really want to get out." Over the next day, a massive operation involving more than 100 rescue personnel unfolded. But the location was an almost impossible challenge. The journey just to get near him took over half an hour, and only the smallest cavers could even reach the area. The space was so tight that access was extremely limited, mostly to his legs, though at times a rescuer could just manage to reach his hand. And here, we have to pause to understand the true horror of John's situation. Being trapped is terrifying. Being trapped upside down is a medical nightmare. The body simply isn't designed to work that way. Gravity fights the circulatory system, forcing the heart to work incredibly hard to pump blood up and out of the brain. Blood pools in the head, building immense pressure. Meanwhile, organs press down on the diaphragm, making it harder and harder to breathe, a condition known as positional asphyxia. With every minute John spent inverted, his body was shutting down. The rescuers knew this. Their primary strategy focused on a complex rope and pulley system. The plan was to attach straps to John's legs and use pulleys anchored to the cave walls to carefully pull him out. The process was painstaking. All the while, rescuers were in constant communication with John, who remained remarkably calm. He spoke to his wife Emily over a police radio, telling her he loved her. He told his brother, "Save me for my wife and kids." For a brief, hopeful moment, the system worked. With a team of 8 people hauling, they lifted John several feet out of the crevice. He was in intense pain, but he was moving. Hope surged through the team. They were so close. Then, disaster. With a terrible crack, the main anchor point for the pulley system failed. The rock where the anchor was drilled, a mix of solid and softer material, couldn't take the strain and ripped free. The entire system collapsed. John slid all the way back down into the crack, this time even deeper than before. It was the story's most tragic turning point. The one plan that offered a real chance had failed catastrophically. As the hours dragged on, John's physical condition deteriorated. The constant pressure was becoming unbearable. He began struggling to breathe, and his responses grew weaker. The effects of being inverted for so long were taking a devastating toll, leading to what rescuers described as periods of confusion. The team was running out of options, and, more importantly, running out of time. By the late evening of Wednesday, November 25th, the day before Thanksgiving, the situation was dire. Another rescuer, Brandon Kowalis, was sent in. When he finally reached the spot, John was largely unresponsive. Kowalis later reported hearing deep, labored breathing, which suggested his lungs might be filling with fluid, a grim but expected medical outcome of his situation. He tried to speak to John, but there was no reply. A paramedic squeezed down far enough to confirm what everyone had begun to fear. Shortly before midnight, after 27 grueling hours, John Edward Jones was pronounced dead from cardiac arrest and suffocation. A profound silence fell over the frantic scene. The race was over. In the aftermath, officials faced an agonizing second decision: what to do about John's body. A recovery attempt would be incredibly dangerous, requiring multiple rescuers to spend long hours in the same treacherous spot, risking their own lives for a man who was already gone. They concluded the risk was too great. After consulting with and receiving the blessing of the Jones family, the heartbreaking decision was made. Before sealing the cave, crews used explosives to collapse the passage near John's body, ensuring he would never be disturbed. A week later, they filled the main entrance with concrete. The cave that had been a place of adventure for so many became a tomb. Today, all that remains is that concrete seal and a memorial plaque dedicated to John Edward Jones. It honors the husband, father, and son who entered the cave for one last adventure and never came out. His wife, Emily, has since remarried and has spoken with incredible grace about moving forward while always keeping John's memory a part of her family's life. It's a story of both immense sorrow and enduring love for their two children, one of whom was named for the father he would never meet. If you found this story as compelling as it is tragic, subscribe for more explorations into incredible true stories that reveal the depths of human resilience and the unforgiving nature of our world. Thank you for watching.